This video includes all the vector graphics pictures that I have created for the Tektronix 4050 microcomputers and a couple of new SVG images that I have found on the web and converted to fast graphics format. What we see on the screen is the demo program, or the part of the demo program that is viewing the images. Got 16 images to show today. And the steps down to line 460 is the main viewer. So let's get into the demo. I clear the screen, type run, and the first image is Impossible Cube, which is something that we saw in my previous video of SVG graphics. SVG is an abbreviation for Scalable Vector Graphics. This format was developed in 1999 to speed up internet viewing of vector graphics pictures, line drawings. 20 years after my Tektronix 4054A was built. I converted each SVG file in this video to my latest fast graphics format, which has already done the scaling and positioning of the image on the 4050 screen, which speeds up the graphics even more than my last video. The image that we're looking at, Impossible Cube, will take about, and let's finish drawing it, it took about 69 seconds, and so it was drawn with my basic program that picks up the data file, the same data file we're going to use in a moment, and does basic move and draw commands. So that 69 seconds, let's see how fast the computer can just pick up the converted output of my program, which is binary file. So drawing it again, and this is fast graphics, or otherwise known as R12 on the ROM pack that I have, graphics enhancement ROM pack. This image took 4.5 seconds, which represents a 15x speed up over what BASIC would do in programs doing move and draw, because in BASIC there's lots of floating point calculations being done, and these floating point calculations are scaling to a window size and moving into a viewport every vector, as opposed to the R12 ROM is picking up the data and it's in native screen format, the resolution being 1024 by 780. Impossible Cube SVG file size was 42 kbytes, or is 42 kbytes, containing 3,600 vectors. The program, and so that's about 52 vectors per second. The fast graphics version of that same image was displayed at 800 vectors per second. I know that modern PCs draw these SVG images in a fraction of a second, but they've got CPUs with speeds over 1 gigahertz, which is 333 times faster than the 3 megahertz CPU in my 40-year-old Tektronix 4054A. Now, let's begin showing some of the images that I have personally created for the Tektronix 4050 computers. R2-D2 is my favorite Star Wars droid. I actually got to watch the introduced film, Star Wars A New Hope movie, in 1977. As I stood in line, waiting to buy a ticket, about a week after the movie opened in San Francisco, I was surrounded in line by folks chatting about how many times they'd seen the movie already. In the theater, when the movie started and the text of A New Hope is scrolling up the screen, the audience stood up and started cheering. At the end of the movie, I wanted to cheer. It was a feel-good movie, unlike anything we'd ever seen before. I loved R2-D2 and C-3PO in that movie. I joined an R2 builders group and went to my first Star Wars celebration, number 3, in 2005 in Indianapolis, and joined other R2-D2 builders in a droid room which was exhibiting dozens of fan-built Star Wars droids. The convention itself was promoting the introduction of Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, the last of George's prequel movies. George Lucas was attending a Star Wars convention for his first time at this convention and was scheduled for an interview with Stephen Colbert. I was in the droid room. Someone from Lucasfilm came into the room and invited all of us in the droid room to attend the interview. We were rushed into the auditorium and seated in the VPI second row. In his interview, George announced he would not be making any more Star Wars movies. Oh, sad face. George introduced Dave Filoni to Stephen Colbert and described that Dave would be creating, with his support and permission, a Star Wars Rebels cartoon series. I was disappointed that there would be no more Star Wars movies. Our group of droid builders was then escorted out of the auditorium back to the droid room, where we were told George would be coming to the droid room. And in less than 15 minutes, George did come into the room with the Star Wars prequels producer Rick McCallum and ILM R2-D2 puppeteer and droid wrangler Don Bees. Upon entering the droid room, George said that he loved droids and he could never get enough droids in his movies. Of course, the droid builders responded with, "We're ready to help," although he had just announced he would not be making any more Star Wars movies. That Saturday at the convention, Don Bees came back to the droid room with the only ILM radio-controlled R2-D2 that they had brought to the convention and had been on the stage during the interview. Don asked if we wanted to drive R2-D2 around, and I actually got to drive the ILM R2-D2 around the droid room. This is the only radio-controlled R2-D2 that ILM had created, and it was used for the prop builders in the UK to construct the R2-D2 that was needed for the first movies. And the R2 builders have measured this ILM R2-D2 in order to create the plans that we use to help make our replicas of R2-D2 as close to what we saw in the movies as possible. I've since attended 7 Star Wars conventions, including exhibiting, driving, and racing my all-aluminum R2-D2 that I built with the help of the R2 Builders Group. I got a second-place trophy for droid racing at the Celebration 6 in Orlando. So that's why I love R2-D2 so much. C-3PO. I haven't built a C-3PO, but I have met Anthony Daniels, the actor that wore the costume for every one of George Lucas's Star Wars movies, and he has been in every one of the last 3 movies done by Disney. You may have noticed at the top of each screen is the title in the top left corner and the creator on the right with a Creative Commons CC by NC 4.0 license. This license indicates that reusers can distribute, remix, adapt, and build upon the material in any medium or format for non-commercial purposes only, and only as long as attributions given to the creator. BB-8. I attended Star Wars Celebration Anaheim in 2015, and I was in the droid room watching a live video of the opening event where J.J. Abrams and the new president of Lucasfilm at Disney, Kathleen Kennedy, introduced the cast of the upcoming The Force Awakens Star Wars movie. I had seen trailers for the movie with a new ball-shaped droid named BB-8, but I thought it could only be CGI, not a radio-controlled droid. We were all stunned when BB-8 rolled onto the event stage and beeped at the actors and turned around and beeped at the crowd. We knew as droid builders we needed to build our own BB-8. So a separate BB-8 builders group was quickly formed. Many photos were taken of the BB-8 on display at the convention, along with other costumes and props from the upcoming Star Wars movie. I purchased my first 3D printer, learned how to print the body of BB-8. I'm now on my third 3D printer and third BB-8, but my BB-8 is now fully radio controlled, and I took it to Celebration Chicago in 2019 and Celebration Anaheim in 2022, and I've posted a video of entertaining the crowd with my BB-8 on my YouTube channel. This image is very close to an image that I had created before, about a year ago. I created a basic program that took those full-size C-3PO, BB-8, and R2-D2 files, and in the basic program ran commands that scaled and repositioned those images on the screen. Running the program takes a lot longer than this image, because now what I've done is my latest creator program allows me to take the full-size image data, and with 2 lines in each of the files or sections, I scale and position the image on the screen. And so the creator program does the heavy lifting and creates then a single file fast graphics image with all 3 of the droids and the Star Wars logo that you see in the top of the screen. K2SO. This droid was featured in the Star Wars Rogue One prequel movie. I created this image file from a JPEG image with the help of Inkscape to trace the image and output an HPGL file, which is plotter language and only contains moves and draws, which is all Tektronix Basic can do. It cannot draw a curved line. That is a data format that wasn't available or known in the 70s, but is used today for things like your CNC machines. It's used in the, there's actually new plotters that are available that know how to follow a curve. B2EMO is a droid that appeared in Disney Plus streaming video series called Andor, A-N-D-O-R, last year. I created this image using Inkscape again to convert and run my creator program to create a fast graphics file. The number of times that you see the orange marks represents how often Inkscape went back through the lines from bottom to top, filling in little pieces of line segments that it had missed on the first pass. And now for something different. Colonial Vipers on patrol. This, if you have seen the Battlestar Galactica TV shows, was in the original Battlestar Galactica show. Basically, those are the ships that the Battlestar Galactica pilots would fly against the Cylons. And if you've seen my video channel, you've seen the Cylon attack game that I created. I really enjoyed watching Battlestar Galactica when it came out on television in the late 70s. The program that I made was in 2000, the year that I purchased my 4052 and 4054 in auctions. This was my first basic program that I had written, since I had used and written programs for a Tektronix 4051 computer in the late 70s at my first job. The Tektronix 4051 was my first experience with a personal computer, and I fell in love with what I could do with Tech Basic and the state-of-the-art 1024 by 780 vector graphics. What we're seeing on the screen is actually based on artwork that I found on a website called thecomputergarage.org, and the author of that website had titled this webpage Computers in the Media, and it began with an article on the 1978 Battlestar Galactica TV series that featured Tektronix 4051 computers being used on the bridge of the Battlestar Galactica. The webpage had a couple of Tektronix articles describing their involvement with the TV series, and he also had a picture of what he called a test plot of a flight of Vipers that he said was pulled from the infamous Battlestar Galactica tape, which the author said had made the rounds of internal and private demos for some time. But at the end of that statement, the author asked if anyone had a copy of the tape, ... Well, I would like a copy of the tape, but have never found one. I assume it was a Tektronix 4050 quarter-inch computer tape. I've recovered over 100 of these Tektronix 4050 computer tapes since I got my computers in 2000. And I've never seen any tape with Battlestar Galactica files, not even one. What I did in 2000, after I found this picture on the website, I printed out that image and digitized the biggest Viper, the one at the bottom of the screen, using my Tektronix 4662 pin plotter, which I have a video of on my channel, with a digitizing pin, which is a transparent pin with a crosshair, so I could put it over each point and hit the button, and it would send the coordinates of that point to the computer. I then wrote a basic program to use that data to scale and position that set of data to show the other 4 Vipers. So the basic program is running the same data, but using basic scaling commands. This is before I got the R12 cartridge for fast graphics on my computer. So with the R12 fast graphics cartridge, this is the first time I've been able to create a single image that contains these scaled objects. So this is similar to my Star Wars Droids montage in that there's the same data is played in to the creator program with different scaling and position commands in order to create one file that we just viewed. A different movie, the original Aliens movie, was introduced in 1979, and there was a computer in the spaceship called Mother, or Muthur. And so there was one brief scene that had a brief picture of the computer screen, and it looked like the artwork in the middle. I found a JPEG image of that graphic and converted it to vectors, and here we go. That movie was very scary. Another movie of this period, a James Bond movie in 1977 called The Spy Who Loved Me, had featured a car that turned into a submarine. And that allowed them to get away from people that were shooting at them. This submarine was created from a Lotus Esprit. And it actually couldn't keep the water out. So the crew on the set called it Wet Nelly. The scenes that we see with the sub underwater, the car was being piloted by two crew in scuba gear. The sub itself cost about $100,000 to build, according to Wikipedia, and the current owner is Elon Musk. A quick Batman logo. As you recall from my previous videos, the Tektronix 4050 vector graphics computers could only draw straight vectors. So these curved lines in the logo takes about 6,000 short straight vectors, but was displayed very quickly. Columbia Space Shuttle. The space shuttles were designed in the 1970s. I actually got to tour the Rockwell International Factory in a Los Angeles suburb at my first job and saw the first space shuttle under construction. This image was converted from a 1989 file that I found that was already in vector format for use with a plotter, and it's for the Columbia Space Shuttle. The Columbia was the first of 5 shuttles to fly in space, and its maiden flight in space was 1981. It flew 28 missions over its 22 years of operations. Columbia disintegrated, tragically, on re-entry in its final flight in February 2003, killing the entire crew and destroying most of the scientific payload aboard. Here we have the Utah Teapot. It's called the Utah Teapot because it was created by Martin Newell in 1975 at the University of Utah. He wanted to create a 3D object with curved lines as opposed to triangles. And so he sketched his Melita brand teapot that he had at the house by hand, and then used a Tektronix terminal to create 3D model with Bezier curve control points. This teapot model has become standard 3D graphics reference object. His original Melita teapot is at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California. I used the teapot sample model from Blender, saved it as a vector model, and converted it to fast graphics format. Here is another famous early 3D computer graphics model, this time of a Volkswagen Bug, a Beetle. This was created by students of Professor Ivan Sutherland in 1972 at the University of Utah. The students measured a 1967 Volkswagen Beetle with yardsticks to create the model with triangular vectors, which Professor Sutherland was teaching the class was one of the ways that you could create a model with of a curved object, and triangles will certainly fit a curved object, but it depends on the resolution, the size of the triangles. Smaller triangles are going to get a smoother object but take much longer for the computers to work with. I converted an SVG vector image of this model into fast graphics format. Dr. Emmett Brown was in the 1985 Back to the Future movie, which I enjoyed. Christopher Lloyd played the character, and Michael J. Fox played Marty McFly. I found this image on Plotter Files. Dan Kay is the creator. And after I did this image, I said, I've got to have an image of the DeLorean time machine, and I couldn't find a vector image. So I made this one from a JPEG. Need Somethings had posted this on Imgur. It allegedly, the DeLorean was created by the DeLorean Motor Company. DMC is on the grille in the front of the car. The stainless steel body was used to create the time machine for the movie Back to the Future. It has gull-wing doors. In the movie, we heard that it took, Dr. Brown said it took 1.21 gigawatts of power from a plutonium reactor to charge the flux capacitor behind the seats, which you can see in the upper right corner through the windshield. When the car reached 88 miles an hour to travel back in time, the pronunciation of gigawatts is how a scientific advisor for the film pronounced it, according to the interview with the DVD in the making of in the DVD of Back to the Future. The Wikipedia article on the DeLorean time machine says that the car's speedometer in the dashboard only went up to 85 miles an hour, but the production crew chose 88 miles an hour because it looked better on the digital speedometer that they put in front of the dash in the movie. This image is the largest in this video at 465 kbytes, which is about 155,000 vectors. I created this once again, similar process with Inkscape and my creator program to turn it into fast graphics. This is a very interesting SVG vector art image I found on plotterfiles.com, and it definitely demonstrates that the lines being drawn, the vectors, are completely straight, no jaggies, even though the vector endpoint resolution of this computer, the mode we're in, is 1024 by 780. So it really shows off how wonderful these displays were for vector graphics. It's now the end of November, after Thanksgiving of 2023, and I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be doing more. Please subscribe to my channel.